If we have not yet had the chance to get acquainted, I am Ashley Tyndall. I like to call myself a Chief Systems Officer, really because it's, extra and why not? But what I do here at Solution Integrators is I help my fellow business owners grow their businesses their way, right? Through the power of a combination of some custom strategy, some process strategy, some client experience strategy, all the things that helps them really fall back in love with their businesses, plus the good stuff of the tech automation, right? So if we have not yet connected, make sure you send me a wave, come holler at me on Instagram, all the things. If you are catching the replay, please don't hesitate to drop your questions. I will catch them when I can and respond. If you are here live, drop your questions at any time. But I am here today because I have seen far too many times with my own clients that the onboarding process generally kind of sucks, right? So it's either the most time consuming part of your business or your processes, or it just really is a little janky, right? So if you've told yourself, hey, after the next client, I'm gonna get this together. Or, after I get through with all these clients, I'm gonna focus on this. Or if you've been avoiding your onboarding process altogether, this is for you. Okay. So really quickly, just to level set with everybody, regardless of where you are in your client experience journey, when I'm talking about the client experience, I'm talking about 5 core phases. Okay. The first being inquiry. Hey, I like Ashley. I like what she's talking about. Let me go fill out her form and go from there. Okay. Booking is, hey, we hop on a call or I send you a proposal. We make it official, right? So sending a proposal, contract, invoice. Onboarding being that third phase of here's my money. Now what? What do I need from you? What do you need from me in order to fulfill the offer? The fourth phase being fulfillment, right? Doing the work. And then the fifth phase is usually offboarding or upsells. So more of a goodbye or see you later, right? For the purposes of this live, I am focused on that third phase, onboarding, okay? Everything that I'm going to show you is what I do in my business. It's my accounts, right? So everything that I'm going to show you always is either going to be something that I actively do in my own business or that I've done in someone else's, right? So I won't lead you astray just making shit up, but I'm going to show you the real active things that I do in my business, okay? So I'm going to share my screen and let's start with okay? Now, again, if you have questions, feel free to drop them as we go. I'm going to do my best to kind of hop back and forth, make sure I can see them. I'll leave time at the end as well for anybody that stays to answer any questions. And if you are watching the replay and you have questions, just let me know, okay? So if you're a Dubsado user, even if you're not a Dubsado user, this still remains the same, okay? I firmly believe that it should take you no more than 10 minutes to truly onboard a client, okay? So from the moment somebody pays you, they make that decision that, yep, I want to work with them, all the way to receiving whatever it is they need to receive, to feel welcomed, their homework, whatever. That process should take no longer than 10 minutes. I had somebody tell me, I think it was a couple weeks ago, that usually within the first 24 hours, a client's going to have their mind made up of if they feel that they wasted their time or if they regretted the decision of hiring somebody, right? So I want you to kind of think through that of your own experience with other service providers, or how your clients work with you, right? Like we don't want anybody to feel like we just took their money and ran off, okay? So this is my active Dubsado account. You're like, Ashley, you got a lot of workflows. I do, right? But they're necessary. So for all 5 of those phases, I will have a workflow, okay? I highly recommend not creating one gigantic workflow in Dubsado because you are going to run into the issue of things sending when they shouldn't send, and potentially running into errors and not really being able to identify where that error is happening. Okay. So I have a workflow for each phase of my client experience and for each service. So when it comes to booking, right, I have my payment plan attached. I do 3Pay, right? Everybody's going to automatically be on a 3 or 4 payment plan. I'm going to send my proposal, hit approve, and walk off, okay? I have it built in my workflow to automatically follow up. If 48 hours goes by and they haven't sent this proposal or they haven't accepted the proposal yet. But the most important part of this workflow is to start onboarding immediately after their invoice installment is paid, okay? So again, I have my payment plan here. If you take 50/50 or 3Pay or whatever your payment arrangement is, make sure you have your payment plan attached to your booking workflow, okay? And not the proposal itself. You can do that if you're doing, well, no, don't do that, right? You can, but I don't recommend it, right? Because we want this workflow to trigger based off of that payment plan. If you do pay in full, no biggie, right? You can do pay, you can apply that payment plan here. But this workflow step is the most important. So I have my payment plan attached on the workflow. And then 0 hours after the invoice installment paid, which invoice installment, that very first one, start this onboarding workflow, okay? So this is like the core step because maybe, my client is working late, which most of mine do, right? Or they're busy. And they're like, oh, let me go ahead and complete this proposal, hop on in, do all the things, right? They complete their proposal, they sign their contract, they pay their invoice. I don't have to do anything, right? This onboarding workflow is going to automatically start for me. I might be asleep. I might be in the middle of another client call. I might be, at Target, whatever. But this onboarding workflow is going to immediately start for me, and then I don't have to do anything. So this is the most important step. If you don't catch anything else in your booking workflow, make sure you have a workflow step to start the onboarding workflow immediately after whatever it is you consider onboarding. If you want to have onboarding start after a contract is signed, that's fine too, right? So instead of after invoice installment paid, you would just do after contract signed. But most of us don't start onboarding until we get that money, okay? So once a client signs their contract, Dubsado is going to automatically send them a contract completed email. We can't turn that off. We can't change that, right? What we can do is edit the verbiage of the email a little bit. And then after they pay, if you're using Dubsado payments, they're going to receive an automatic receipt as well. So what I like to do, because they're getting back-to-back emails, is 2 things. I like to, if you go over to canned emails, edit templates, contract completed, I like to edit the verbiage of this email, right? A lot of people are probably like, I didn't even know that was a thing, right? If you don't edit it, I think it just says like a copy of your contract and then here's the PDF, right? But this is the email that's going to automatically go out when a client signs their contract. Mine says something like, hey, a copy of your contract and next steps. Quick note to confirm. Once, here's a copy of your contract. Once payment is verified, we'll countersign. Be on the lookout for your welcome email with the next steps, right? I like to add this just because it truly is an automated email. I'm not sending it. Even though my other ones are automated, I don't like them to feel as automated. But this one is like, look, I can't control it. It's going out. Here's the email, okay? So that's the first thing I do. If you haven't, pro tip, go edit this email, okay? And you can find it under canned emails, edit templates, contract completed. The third thing that I do, so once my client signs, they pay their deposit, this workflow automatically triggers. What it's going to do is activate their client portal if you're using it. And it's going to change their workflow status or their project status to onboarding, okay? So keep a mental note of this because this is where Zapier and other things come into play. but I'm going to change their project status to onboarding. Okay. And about 0.25 hours after, that's like literally like 8 minutes, I think, they're going to receive their welcome guide. Okay. Again, we live in a world of instant gratification. I don't ever want somebody to feel like I just took their money and ran the fuck off. I want them to feel like, okay, this was a good decision. I feel supported. I know Ashley knows what she's talking about. Let's do this, right? So again, they sign their contract. Dubsado sends the automated email. They pay their invoice. Dubsado sends them a receipt. And then about 8 minutes later, they're going to get this email from me. Okay. In this email, I send them their experience guide. I believe that most times people will look at it. If you send multiple things at once, people will look at like one or the other, but not all of them. I am people, right? It just is what it is, right? So I always like to send the welcome guide, experience guide, handbook, whatever you want to call it first, okay? Hey, welcome to Solution Integrators, next step inside, okay? So I'm using the send form action, 0.25 hours. So like I said, it's like 8 minutes, I think. After the onboarding workflow begins, I select my template and then I select my email. Okay. Like, again, I got to be extra. So why not have a header in my email? I don't do this in all my emails, but it can't hurt to be a little extra. You just create a graphic in Canva and put it at the top of your email. But in this email, I let them know, hey, your contract has been signed and received, and I've added your project to my calendar. I want to make sure you feel welcomed and supported. I've included an access or link to my client welcome guide below, right? Here's what's in it, all the things. Here's the link. Okay. I have my own custom project hub. I use a tool called Kitchen. Happy to show that if anybody wants to see it. But I use a separate tool that has to be set up in some capacity. So what I like to do is send this welcome guide, let them know, hey, in the welcome guide, you're going to see all the information you need to see. And then you're going to receive an email inviting you to join me in the project hub. Okay. Be on the lookout. All the things are coming soon. Okay. So I'm setting expectations early and often. They signed up. Because have you ever, like, honestly, like if you've worked with a service pro or even a bigger company and you paid somebody and then you had to follow up with them, right? Like, it's been a few days, it's been a week and I haven't heard crickets and I just paid you a 4-figure deposit, right? None of that. So 8 minutes after they pay me, they receive this email with their welcome guide. If you don't have a welcome guide, that is fine. Send something, right? Send something to let them know what to expect, when to expect it, and just to calm that anxiety as well. So I don't really use the Dubsado client portal. Shanice asked a question in the chat. I use Kitchen. The portal, they'll have access to their invoice and their contract there. I don't ever really send the link, but I just use Kitchen. So Kitchen is their project hub or portal. I don't use the Dubsado client portal. My only reason for that is because there's not two-way communication. And I hate emails. So I don't want to have to email back and forth about things. I want a central place that I can grab a Dubsado form link and share it in my own controlled project hub and do all client communication there. Let me know if you have more questions about that. Now, again, I'm happy to show it as well. Okay. So again, I am at Target doing some shopping. Client paid me their deposit. 8 minutes later, they received their experience guide. Okay. What I would recommend, again, because I'm using a separate tool, I don't have this in my workflow, but what I would recommend is then if you have homework of some kind, right? You need them to fill out a form. You need them to grant you access. 24 hours after you send this experience guide, then send the homework, okay? Like, hey, glad you had a chance to check out the experience guide. here's your homework to go get started. Okay. What I do is I book, or I have my VA book our kickoff calls. And so this one you can see is being applied to the project. So the client never sees it. When they receive their proposal, we already have a predetermined date for the kickoff call. And I do kickoff calls at certain times. So this is applied to the project so that when my VA needs it, she can come right in, she can book it. This usually happens that next day, right? So what I've done to kind of get around this, a little pro tip for you, is in this project kickoff call scheduler, the confirmation email is really that 24-hour, hey, go access your hub or go access your homework, right? So instead of a generic, your project call has been scheduled, I have what I call this let's get started email, which I can show you guys somewhere. Which one is it? This one. So this is the email that goes out when my VA schedules their kickoff call, which again would be usually the next day after they receive their welcome guide. You can customize this email however you see fit, right? Like this automatically, this doesn't look like a general appointment confirmation. But because the confirmation email is going to go out when she schedules it, I want to make sure that they have all the things. Hey, we're in phase 1, right? For the success of our project, I've added your project guide and intake form to your hub. Access instructions are below. We will meet for your session on this day at this time, okay? Add the appointment to your calendar. So by using this as an appointment confirmation in the scheduler, they can receive this information, but this is really me granting them access to their project hub. Okay, so here's how to access the project hub. Here's, tips on completing your intake form. Okay, so again, this is the confirmation email on the scheduler for their kickoff call, because I like to control that. If you have issues where people are taking forever to schedule their kickoff calls, I would consider doing something like this. Okay, just throwing that out there. But this will be what they get 24 hours after we onboard. Okay. Now, in between them receiving their client experience guide, Zapier is doing all of the things for me. Okay. I'm going to hop over to the tab. Now, if you are manually doing a lot of the onboarding process steps, if you hired a person to manually do all the things, right, I highly recommend you consider Zapier, right? So definitely map out what you want those onboarding steps to look like, okay? By sending the welcome guide immediately, that gives me and my team to prepare internally, okay? Yes, they need to go set up the project hub, or my VA needs to set up the project hub. Yes, I might want to review their intake form, add a little something depending on what we talked about, but I have the time to do that before the client gets access, okay? Why? Because Zapier kicked in the moment that onboarding workflow began, okay? So in Zapier, my trigger for this this is my my Dubsado setup onboarding Zap. When a status changes in Dubsado, this workflow will trigger. Now, this is going to trigger for any Dubsado status change, but I only want it to continue if it has a combination of things. And really, it's going to be if the status is onboarding and the service contains, or the project title in Dubsado contains simplified systems, or if it contains Dubsado or something like that, right? But it is looking for the current status of onboarding, okay? And if you recall, over in Dubsado, one of my first steps in my onboarding workflow was to change the project status to onboarding, okay? From here, I like to just trim the Dubsado status. So when it comes in through Zapier, it'll come in as lead and a colon, and then the status. I just want everything after the colon. So this step, that's all it's doing. I use Airtable to track my leads, track my projects, mostly from like a project availability perspective. And then I use ClickUp as my true project management tool. I have another workshop on why I do all of that later on this month. But I have my lead tracker, right? So what I want this to do for me so that I don't have to go do it is go find that person's lead record in my lead tracker and then update them to booked, right? Again, something simple, but something that I just didn't have to go do, right? And then in the client's project record, so inside of Airtable, I have, a lead tracker on one table, and then I have an availability tracker on another. When I send the proposal, there's a different Zap that puts their availability record as, proposal sent. And then this is going to find that record and then update them to whatever status they are in Dubsado, which is onboarding, right? I do this so that my availability calendar is always up to date. I share my availability calendar on all of my applications. I'm very transparent of when we can start on the project, when I'm going to be done with the project, when payments are due, right? So if you go look at an application, it's all there face up for you, right? And so that I don't have somebody trying to book a date that's no longer available, this Zap is updating it for me, okay? So it's going into my available projects, and then it's updating them as onboarding, and then that date is no longer available on my availability tracker, okay? Then it's going to add them as a current client status in ConvertKit. Why? What if I am out for an extended period of time and I just need to send a mass email to all of my current clients? Well, if they're tagged accordingly in my email marketing tool, because Dubsado is not an email marketing tool, I can then go send a blast email out, okay? So whether you use ActiveCampaign, Flowdesk, MailChimp, whatever, this step can then tag that client as active or current client so that you can send, more general, broad communications for whatever reason, okay? This step just checks to see if they are in my Google contacts, because if for whatever reason I need to just manually send you an email, I just want them there, right? And then this piece, because you can't yet duplicate an entire folder structure, I actually have Zapier create my Google Drive folders, right? So for me, my own personal Google structure is to have a parent folder, I have an internal folder, and then I have a folder that clients drop information in, right? I have call recordings. I want them to upload brand files, right? Whatever your ideal structure is, you don't need really a person to go do that if Zapier can do it for you, right? So this is creating the parent folder and then the nested folders within this folder for me. Again, my VA didn't have to do it. I didn't have to go do it. Zapier is doing this the moment that Dubsado status changes to onboarding, okay? Inside of Airtable, I also track kind of like I call it primary client record, but really it's like all of my clients ever in their address information, their lifetime client value, all of those things. So again, this Zap is going to create or find their record and then add their address, okay? These steps here, 20 through 24-ish, are probably the most important. So again, think about how you do what you do, right? For me, specific to Dubsado, I do everything in a client's account. I'm going to write their emails. I'm going to map out their client experience. They're going to have their own intake form. I provide templates. So if you don't have a welcome guide, I'm going to give you a template that you can use, and then I'll go create it. If you don't have a offboarding guide, I'm going to give you a template that you can use, and then I'll go create it. Well, I want to create client-specific copies of those things, right? I don't want my VA to have to sit here and go find the templates, make a copy, rename them in the new client folder. I can have Zapier do it. So I have a master document of all the emails that I've ever written. And this step here copies that and puts it into that client's folder, right? So it creates the copy, it names it, their project, and then it puts it in their folder. It creates their custom client experience guide that I will edit for them based off of what we discuss. It puts it in their folder. It creates their intake form, right? I do not use the Dubsado questionnaires for intake form anymore, only because my forms are pretty lengthy, and Dubsado does not yet have a autosave feature. And Google, I mean, everybody is pretty familiar with Google, right? I haven't had anybody that's like, I've never used a Google Doc before. So my intake form is inside of a Google Doc. It's just easier to use. We can comment. I can turn off access at a certain point. But it makes a copy. It even fills out some of their information, right? Their name, their email address, when things are due, based off of what we had already discussed and entered in the proposal. It puts all of that information for me, for them, inside of this form. And then it creates the offboarding guide and welcome guide template as well. Okay. And then the last two steps, I am really, really, really big on taking action when I need to, or having my VA take action only when she needs to, right? I'm not sitting in Dubsado all day. I'm not sitting in Airtable all day, nor would I pay somebody else to go do that. But I want me and my team to be notified when action needs to be taken, okay? So what this does is the intake form that it just created up here in step 22, it goes and drops that in Airtable. And then I have an Airtable automation, which I'm happy to share, which it actually sends that through Slack. So in Slack, my team gets a whoop. We just got a new signed client. Onboard Ashley Tyndall. Here's the link to her intake form. My VA doesn't have to go searching for it. She has the link. She goes and sets up the kitchen project hub, and then we keep it moving, right? So again, I'm hoping, at least as I'm walking through this, like this is my own unique process. Like this is how I like to work, right? How my brain works, what's best for me and my team, and what's best for me and my clients. But I want you to think through, from everything that I've showed so far, right? Like what makes sense, or what things are slowing you down from stopping you from onboarding a client quickly, right? Again, this is one Zap. The moment that status changes in Dubsado to onboarding, all of this happens for me in a matter of seconds, minutes, right? I don't have to do anything. My team doesn't have to do anything. They're notified when they get to take action, or when they need to take action, right? I did mention for this will kick off an Airtable automation, which I am happy to show. Again, everything that I do or everything that I'm showing you are things that I'm actively doing in my business, right? So I won't, I'll do my best not to ever lead you astray, but I'm showing you, I'm giving you these things because they work, right? Now, granted, they work for me. They work for me in my business, my brain, how I work. But I'm hoping it gives you some inspiration, right? So this automation will trigger if the project status is onboarding and the intake form is not empty. So again, remember in Zapier, that last step is going to drop the intake form into their client record. It's then going to send over a message to the team chat, whoop, new signed client, link to their intake form below, right? And then depending on the service, I do have templates for inside of ClickUp. So ClickUp, I don't bring my clients into ClickUp. I don't really want them to have to learn another thing. But ClickUp is what keeps me on track, what keeps me and my team on track. So I have templates for each service based off of my own custom project timelines and all the things. So what this then does is, hey, if the service is Dubsado, go create a task for Montana. That says, hey, here's the link. Go ahead and create the ClickUp list And then the ClickUp list basically tells us everything else that we need to go do from there. Okay. So I know I geeked out. I know that was a lot, but to recap, focused on onboarding, right? What can you do? What can you create or simplify in your Dubsado workflows, leveraging Zapier to help you onboard a new client in under 10 minutes? So again, I didn't have to manually do anything in this process, right? I set it up, I walked away. In my first booking workflow, immediately after my invoice installment is paid, the onboarding workflow begins. That onboarding workflow is going to send them the client experience guide. I didn't have to do that. Zapier then triggers to create their file folders, add them as a tag of current client in ConvertKit, pulls in their or creates their intake forms and their templates. It adds it to Google Drive, their unique Google Drive folder. It gives them access. It adds it over to Airtable. And then it notifies that my team that, hey, Ashley is ready to be onboarded. Here's the link to her intake form. Go do your thing, right? So if you are struggling with any phase of this or mapping out what this could look like for you and your business, make sure you check out the freebie that is linked in the description. I'll add a link here as well. But that freebie is really going to help you really map out your own custom client experience, right? What do you want to have happen? What do you want your clients to see and to feel and to hear throughout every phase of working with you? And then how can you automate that shit, right? So I hope you guys enjoyed everything that I've shared so far. I have 3 more workshops or lives planned this month. The next workshop, we are talking all about using Dubsado to set boundaries. So I'm going to dive into that client experience guide. I'll dive into a couple of the other, emails that I send out throughout the initial booking process. But boundaries are important, right? As my business grows, I continue to add more boundaries because it's necessary, right? But for not just for my clients, but for me also. The third workshop, we're going to talk about some common client experience mistakes I see made and how to not make them, regardless of what tool you're using. And then that last workshop this month is going to be all focused on all-in-one tools don't exist, because they don't. If you see a tool say they're all-in-one tool, they are lying. Fight me. But I use 3 core tools. I use a lot of tools, but I use Dubsado for client management and to get paid. I use ClickUp for project management, and then I use Airtable for data management. And I'm going to show you how and why I use those 3 tools. Okay. So make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Check out the freebie in the description. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, if you're watching the replay, drop your questions. I will respond when I can. But otherwise, you guys have a great Wednesday.